At When We're Not Hustling, we believe that seeing sex workers as full people outside of our work is an essential step towards humanizing and destigmatizing the industry and those who work within it. Help us to bring you the stories of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is a 501c3 fiscally sponsored nonprofit project of the Social Good Fund. Thank you for considering a tax-deductible recurring contribution. All contributions will be received through our fiscal sponsor, the Social Good Fund. You can contribute at nothustling.com. Thank you so much.
Put away the lingerie. I want to know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the news. I'd rather hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I probably should just pull up a chair and tell me more.
Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On this show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. Those of you who've been following the show for the last couple of weeks know that I started working with Mr. Black Venom to create Black Venom Digital, which is a web design company catered to people within the sex industry. To launch this business, Mr. Black Venom has graciously offered to give a listener a free website. And we created a raffle that a lot of you should know about by now, but it is finally closed. And I appreciate everyone who participated in the contest, and we couldn't settle on just one. So we have two winners. The winners of our raffle are Serena Leone and Freya Frey. We will be contacting both of you and are very, very excited to offer you something new and get this project started. If you did not enter the contest, but you're interested in web design services or any sort of branding services, please feel free to reach out. The website is blackvenomdigital, all spelled out, .com. Thank you for everyone who showed interest and participated, and we are very excited to get this new agency up off the ground. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I am your host, Jessie Sage. Today, I have a very fun guest with me. I have Dominique Rystan on. I have interviewed Dominique many times, one really much earlier in both of our careers on my old show, Peep Show podcast, toward the beginning, actually, maybe 2017, 2018. I also had them on a panel about independent porn creation during COVID when we were doing, when Peep Show was doing panel performances and live events. So we did that as well on Zoom, and I am excited to have her back now. So I always like talking to Dominique. So I reached out and said, hey, do you want to be on this show? And she did a thing that's similar to, for those of you who've been listening to the show, that Tripp Richards did, which is like, I don't believe in the mission. And what Tripp did is say, I can't really talk about doing anything without including my sex work persona, because everything that I do is infused with that identity. Dominique did the opposite thing, which I also think is so valid and interesting, which is to say that they said, I don't really want to share that part of myself with my sex working fans and clients. So like, I am very intentional to keep those parts of my life separate. So no, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about my hobbies and my life and my things that I'm doing when I'm not working with the people who interact with my work. And that seemed so fair to me that I thought I would have her on to talk about that. And so this episode is all about why she does not want to share those parts of her life. So it was fun. It was a little hard to talk about what we're not going to talk about, but also I think that was a fun exercise. So I hope that you enjoy the episode. As an introduction, Dominique Rystan is a trans porn performer residing in the desert of Arizona, who's also a self-proclaimed lesbian, dominatrix, goddess, hetero breakup enthusiast, and lover of rotting girls. I do not actually know what that means, and I didn't have that bio before I interviewed her. Otherwise, I would have asked. But I don't know. Maybe go buy a clip and then ask her about the rotting girls. That's what I think you should do. Anyways, let's turn right to the interview. Hi, Dominique. How are you doing?
I'm very well. How about yourself?
Good. I am happy to see you again. It has to be like 6 years since since I had you on Peep Show.
I feel like it was, well, I don't know if it was the same thing. There was that like discussion roundtable with, I think.
Oh, that's
Rue
right.
was there. And I think
you're right.
Laura was there. Yeah.
I forgot about that. That was during the pandemic. So you're right. And then the time that PJ and I had just you on, that was probably like 2017 or 2018. It was maybe 2018. It was a
2017
while ago. Yeah. So we have both been around for a while.
Yeah. I've been doing this for 12 years now.
12. Wow. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience for people who don't know you?
All right. My name is Dominique Rystan, and I am primarily I do porn and domination work.
Yeah. Nice. Is that how you picked your name?
No. The name is what people call me in life too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one of, so it's I have a very long first name, and it's half of it.
Oh, really? Interesting. Yeah. So I reached out to you because obviously I like having you on my shows. Now this is the third time. I forgot it was the third time, but it is. And I asked you if you wanted to come on and talk a little bit about what you do outside of work. And in the same way, actually, in an opposite way, I would say the very first episode that we put out of this show, we had Trip Richards on, who said, I don't know that I agree with the premise of the show because everything that I do is somehow incorporated into, like, sex work is a part of everything that I do. So I don't know that it makes sense to talk about myself outside of that. And I appreciated that pushback. And when I reached out to you, you almost pushed back in the opposite direction, which I also appreciate, which is that you said, I don't really want to share that part of my life with other people. I have a very well-crafted persona that protects some of that. And I think that's a fair pushback too. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about why you responded like that and kind of where you are in your career that's how you feel.
Yeah. For me, it's like there's just a really clear delineation between on camera and off camera. And it's not that like I'm a different person or I'm putting on a persona for my work. Like, I'm very honest, but I keep certain things separate, like my hobbies and a lot of the things I do in my free time, just because I learned that I didn't like when I would share things with people and then they would act like they knew me because they knew those things about me. And I also didn't like having every aspect of my life related to being working.
Yeah.
So talking about what I like when I'm not working feels like adding that to working.
Yeah. Does it almost feel like you're turning the things that you like into work? Like, like somehow work is sucking them up?
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the things, what you're saying is, or what it seems to me like you're talking about is parasociality. And I deal a lot with that too, because I do talk a lot about my life and stuff that's going on. And that's a very weird experience when people do act like they know you, even though it's so asymmetrical and you don't know anything about them, and they
Yes.
make a lot of assumptions about your life. I find, to me, and I don't know if you want to speak to this, I find that the harder thing about that isn't that they know particular things, but that they tend to think that we're closer than we are. It's like, I think that can get very confusing for people because you've somehow been incorporated into their life, but like, I don't actually know anything about them, or I don't feel that same sense of closeness. And I wonder if you feel like that when that happens to you.
Definitely. That's a big part of it. It's not the only part of it for me, but definitely a big part of it is like I've had conversations about like movies I liked, and then had like the person I was talking to about it like assume that we're close now and that they know my personality now just because I said a few passing remarks about a film I liked.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's definitely annoying and part of why I keep it separate. But also, like, everything I put online is consumed as content. And when I share things about my life, that is consumed as content.
Yeah.
Some of that I've made peace with. Like, I talk about my romantic relationships and my sexual relationships sometimes, even if I write about it vaguely. And I understand that those things are consumed as content and taken almost generally. Like, I write a lot of things that I've said out loud to other people as tweets.
That's part of just like maintaining a Twitter following. Yeah.
Not really. It's more like, honestly, I feel like I do it to make Twitter more usable for me. Because if I were to use Twitter as a proper work tool, I would never talk about anything to do with my life. I would just like make bait posts like, oh, I'm your hot big dick mommy and you want to give me money. And that'll be all my tweets, every single one.
Yeah.
So I use it a little bit like a diary too, just so that I'm comfortable being online. And sometimes I like that it's off-putting. But at the same time, that's all consumed as content, even when it's not understood. And I've made peace with that. But there's certain things I don't want consumed as content, just as a mental separation. Like, for example, like if I am to grieve something, like if I were to share like, oh, hey, here's my pet. When my pet dies in X amount of years, now my grief is to be consumed.
Right. Yeah.
As was my relationship with the pet.
Yeah.
So things like that, I don't want to share, but also like just things I like to do for fun. Like, I don't want that consumed because then it colors it differently for me.
Yeah.
It changes the context.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think a lot of people who do the kind of work that we do don't necessarily want to share things because they feel like maybe they'll be less, I don't know, that the transference might not work as much because, you know, if you have fans that suddenly are like, oh, I hate that hobby that you do, then you might be off-putting to them. And then you're like, making your net smaller, but it doesn't sound, you know, so I think that a lot of people feel like that, especially about controversial things like politics or whatever. But I think that you're saying something different, which is not that you're concerned about losing customers. You're actually like concerned about losing yourself.
Yeah.
And your hobbies.
I'm happy when I lose customers at this point in my career, because the less people that consume me in a way I don't agree with, the better.
Yeah. Is this right now, at this point, like 12 years in, is this the primary thing that you do? Is this your primary job?
Yes, it has been my only job. It has always been my only real job.
Yeah.
I've done
so you
other
are dependent
work
on it for a living.
Yeah.
It's not like you can be completely flippant about what people.
I mean, at this point, I can be.
Yeah.
That's how afloat I am with it.
That's nice, right?
Yeah, it is.
So tell me a little bit about that evolution. I mean, you do say that you use Twitter like a diary and do share some of the things about your life in that regard. But has this been, has your reticence to share things about your life changed over time?
Yes, very much. I used to talk about my political activities a lot. I used to talk about my teaching a lot. And I used to talk about my hobbies a lot. I talk about, you know, things I watched, things I consumed, things I read, things I played, and all of that. I shared it all. And every piece that I shared was consumed as content.
Yeah.
And that was, I came to a point, and I have been coming to a point for a long time of being more honest with myself. And in doing that, it meant having a more clear delineation between work and not work. Because who I share myself as I'm working is like my most honest form. And then everything else is like not related. It's like something other.
Yeah. So this may sound like a pretty basic question, but like, how would you describe or how would you define like content and what your relationship to content is? Because you're talking about like not wanting to get consumed by content or have your, how would like, what does that mean to you? And how would you define content and your relationship to your content?
Sure. Yeah. Well, in the broad sense, content is just everything that you post, everything that you publish. So, every single thing I share becomes content the second it is shared. Of course, there's the difference between what you sell and what you share. And what I sell is also content, but so too is what I share. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting delineation of like, there are some things that we just put out and then there are some things that we sell. I actually found, so I left online work and went into like in-person and full service work several years ago. And I found that that actually became much easier after I left. That there's something in particular. So even though I'm like a very online person in terms of like writing and podcasting and talking to folks and doing the things that I do, there does feel like there's something different about like, but the thing that I'm selling is like in-person interactions, and it isn't my online persona in the same way. And I'm not exactly sure why, but it felt like that was much harder in the online sex workspace. One of the reasons I wanted to like, well, there was a lot of reasons, but like I found it to be harder to separate yourself from like, harder to separate your workout from your life when you're online so much.
Yep, definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah.
A lot of like my experience with in person. I mean, we're a little different because my experience with in person is because of online. So to a degree, it's still because of content.
Oh, yeah, that's true, I think. Yeah.
But yeah, like a lot of the people I know who do only in person, there's really clear, really easy delineation. And yeah, so I agree with that being the outcome for you. I've never been offline only.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I understand what you're saying though, because often like my personas are like very tightly woven, and often people will be like, I booked you because I like your show or because I read your writing or things like that, so that my content is still the thing that's like the driving force. But there is something different about like leaving your house and going and doing something that starts and stops, and then going back to your life that feels a little bit different than that. So it's, one of the things that I've thought about a lot. I'm 10 years in the industry now, so a little bit less than you, but I think a lot about people who are like getting into it. And because especially during COVID, I think that there was like an onslaught of people who were like, how do I get into online sex work, in particular online sex work? And I remember feeling and like, unless you want this to become your world, I would suggest you don't. And I felt like I'm the worst person to give advice because my advice is always like, don't do that. That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like sex work, but because it is like this all-encompassing thing. And people are like, oh, you just sell feet pics and you'll get a windfall of money. And I'm like, no, that's not actually how it works. So I'm curious, given like how much you've like shifted into like trying to protect your own like space and spirit and life, how you feel about that, about people like coming and asking. I'm assuming you've gotten things like that too.
It's funny because last time we talked, we actually talked about that. I think one of the things I said was it's never too late to start, but it's always too late to stop.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's
very
still
distinct way to say that.
Yeah, I think that's still true. And that's something that a lot of people aren't really like, because of the pandemic, people, of course, turn to sex work online as a means to survive.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Not being able to work the ways that they did before. So, yeah. Whether now it's like, the entire scope of the workplace in the world has shifted, even though like people want to pretend it hasn't, just because of like, okay, now we have hundreds of millions of people who cannot work in the same way, and also because of that, economy is trying to make up for that however they can. Just changes the landscape of everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of people are gonna want to get into this because it's one of the few online works that actually can give you a good return on investment for hours.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of easily accessible online work is like reviewing this for 25 cents and you have to do 10,000 a week to get $100.
Right. I can't tell you how many DMs I get a week of people wanting me to review shit. Always like sex toys. And I'm like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah. But you're getting that because of who you are. When someone's just like, okay, what can I do online that will give me money fast?
Right.
It's like, oh, do you want to do like transcribing or reviewing websites or, you know, and it's all shit pay.
Right.
Whereas sex work, the promise of it from everyone coming into it from social media and people talking it up is low effort, high reward.
When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform, Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the sex industry. Learn more at assembly4.com. ASSEMBLYFOUR.com. Thank you for listening to When We're Not Hustling. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Doing so will help other people find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
So it's like, yeah, how the fuck do I get in and how do I get there as quickly as possible? Which is understandable, but
I don't think it's like as people think, though.
No, that's what I'm saying is the expectation is that because of what they've heard, and then when they get into it, it's a whole monster that they have to climb. So I get people who ask me how, and I'm like, don't. If you don't have to, don't. You're not going to like it. And also, it's so oversaturated now. It's really hard to make it unless you know a lot about social media.
Right.
And you know how to play the algorithms, and you know how to play like prompting interaction.
Right. And it changes so rapidly too.
Yes. Like every few months, there's a new meta for how to get maximum engagement on X website.
Right. Do you spend a lot of time doing that?
No,
I don't either.
No, 0.
But we have the advantage of having come in when it wasn't oversaturated.
Yes, I am big enough that it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like you talk about the fact that you very much like protect your personal life from your sex work. Do you do the same in the other direction? Like, are you
to a degree? Yeah. One of my hobbies, I'm not going to say what it is, but I've made a lot of friends through it. And I will tell them what I do, but I won't tell them my name.
Mm-hmm.
They'll never be able to know who I am.
Yeah.
And a lot of them don't even know, like, I'm trans.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just never mention it.
Yeah.
And they just assume. So makes it even harder to find me.
Is that something that you don't like to share with people, like outside of the industry?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really like to talk about it at all because it doesn't really feel super relevant to my life. A lot of my trans peers are like, their entire identity is wrapped up into their transness, which I think is beautiful and revolutionary. But for me, mine's about my lesbianism. So it's just very different.
So that's lesbianism is a stronger identity for you.
To me, that's my gender. Yeah.
Yeah. That's neat.
But, it is valuable for through lines and understanding to have the language to be like, yeah, I am this way as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you were to meet like newer sex workers who've already decided to go in, do you think that you would suggest that they be careful about what they share and what they don't share? Or what kind of advice would you give?
Yeah, I would say you want a life outside. You might not right now because it's exciting and you're making new friends. And sometimes it even feels like your fans are your friends. They're not. They're not, I promise. They are consuming you. Yeah. You are to be consumed. So make yourself a place where you're free from that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's hard to, I like what you said about like at the beginning when it feels exciting, because I think it's hard to know or to understand what it feels like to be consumed like that until you live with that for a certain amount of time.
Yes.
Until you realize that there are people who can't see around that. And that's like the only thing they associate with you.
Yeah. But even when they don't, even when they act completely different, they still are doing it. And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow for a lot of people.
Yeah. 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 I think that the isolation that brings is a hard pill to swallow.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
I've often said that like the work itself is not, it suits me. It's all the stuff around it that I think is the harder thing to adjust to, which is like how isolating it is, how it isolates you from other people that are outside of the industry.
Yeah. Not even just like with how they treat you, but experientially.
Oh,
and your relation to like finances and trade.
Yeah. Do you want to say more about that?
Sure. Like, I feel like a sex worker's relationship to like romantic relationships, if they've done it long enough and are smart enough in it, completely changes because you start to see more the ways that people are making trades with you in exchange for intimacy all the time. The way that they're trying to pay for it. And once you have that eye, it makes you a lot more discerning for relationships in general, whether romantic or sexual or just social.
Yeah. I think so. I found that actually it makes it makes me less inclined to want to engage in a lot of things because I'm
Exactly.
like, you're just like, well, what are you bringing to this? Like, I
Your
often,
payment sucks, actually.
yeah. And I feel like I don't know how to process that or like how to feel about it. But like, I've often had the experience where I'm like, this is worse than work. I don't know like how to deal with this. And
Exactly.
and also the parasocial thing. Like, I remember going out on a date with a woman one time who, like, it was just a civvy date.
Yeah.
And she was asking me, and she asked me out. She like reached out to me and asked me out. And I go, and she's like, what do you want out of this? And I was like, it's a very weird question given that you asked me. I didn't invite you here. What do you mean? I don't really know that I want anything. I'm
here to see what's going on.
I'm just here, and then she goes, oh, hold on, because I feel like you've said contradictory things. And she pulls out of her purse a list of notes that she took about me, like things that I had said in different, the first meeting I ever met with this woman. And I was like, dumbfounded. Like, you're asking me to defend myself against things I've said like over years. I was like, I can't with this. This is so dumb.
That's excruciating.
It was so bad. And I was like, she's not interacting with me. She's interacting with me as a persona that she has constructed based on her like fandom of me, which made it completely unappealing to interact with her. Because I'm like, we're not actually interacting.
No, you are to be consumed.
Yeah, right. And that's that feels bad. And when it happens over and over again, it feels bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, not to be doom and gloom, but yeah, I think those sorts of things you don't anticipate having because they're so odd that like when it is exciting and new and you're like, oh, I'm getting, the kind of some sort of attention. You don't realize that the like flip side of that attention is that people aren't actually interacting with you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot to it,
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. 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 I think that this is like an interesting conversation that is worth having about like what it means to actually, I think what you're talking about is like what it means to be like a public figure, especially one that's stigmatized like are, which adds a layer of complexity to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, what do you, I don't want to ask you what you have going on in your life. I mean, I do, but not on the podcast.
I can talk about things I write about.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah.
I recently shared my interest in really niche music. And it has been fun to get more into it. I took a little break. I don't really know what the genre is, honestly. It's like experimental, ambient, emo,
okay.
pop.
I see that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm like, as soon as you said that, I was like, yeah, okay.
I really enjoy Midwest emo. Like, I don't like traditional emo music or screamo or a lot of those genres. I can
one of my
enjoy them.
Like screamo, and I was like, I'm going to die.
I'll send you an album for them.
Okay.
It's I think it's Swedish or Norwegian.
There's a lot of screamo up there, huh?
Yeah. It's really nice though. It's not like it's not too heavy. It's got screaming, but it's like good rhythms, good riffs.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So where do you write about this stuff?
Twitter.
Okay. Yeah.
Everything I share on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's my main social media platform.
That's mine too, and it's still my favorite, even though I hate Elon Musk.
Yeah.
But
all
Twitter
the changes are so terrible.
So bad. But even so, it's still the best platform for us.
Yeah, it's still my favorite. It's like, oh, you're ruining my favorite thing, but it's still my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's worse now. I like it less now, but it's still my favorite.
Still my favorite too.
Yeah, so I also use Instagram and Reddit. Reddit is the one I share the least.
I hate Reddit.
Reddit's disgusting.
I hate everything about Reddit. Mostly I hate it because back in like the content, when I did a lot more content and I was trying to put up like pictures, just even my pictures, there were all these moderators who were like, no, you can't put your picture. And I'm like, you're telling me you won't take a picture of me? Like,
yeah.
One time I put on one of my pictures that PJ took it, like did a photo credit, and they got on me and said, you can't do this. This is supposed to be amateur and you're citing your boyfriend. And I was like, right.
What? My professional photographer husband, actually.
Okay. And they just gave me such a hard time. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I was just doing a normal thing to do, which is like credit the person that took your picture.
Yeah.
But I was so irritated with like every single subreddit had different rules. And I was like, I don't have like the bandwidth to learn what the rules are in all these different places. I don't know how people use that site.
Yeah. I mostly use my own page.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few like trans-specific ones that allow advertising, and I use those. It's like 3 now because a lot of them got deleted.
It's hard though. It's just a hard thing.
Yeah. It's a weird ass website, but it made me very successful years ago, so I still use it.
People say that, yeah. I know, like B York, who's really successful now, like came up through Reddit too. Like that's where she built her audience. And I know a lot of people do, but it's just I can't bring myself to use it.
No, yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah. It's just too much gatekeeping. I can't, man. Although I say that, and then I know we're being like siloed and shadow banned to death, like on the other sites, but it's less explicit. Yeah. So I'm just like,
yeah. And you're still allowed to be in stuff.
Yeah, right.
Like you can go on any viral post and advertise under it if you want to.
Sure, right.
You're not going to get banned or whatever for that.
Yeah.
I don't do that, of course. It's just different than Reddit, where it's like you post one time and it's like, oh, you're actually banned from posting here ever again.
I know.
Because you had a watermark and it's your picture. But if someone were to take that picture and upload it and they weren't you, that would be fine.
Yeah, right. No, it's just a lot to manage. The one thing that I love about Twitter, and this is what you were alluding to, is that sometimes it's really funny what people like take up. Like I remember when Hunter Biden, when that whole thing came out about how much money he spent on sex workers, like all of my like escort friends were like, I'm available. Hunter Biden. I would take
party with Hunter Biden. Let's go.
And suddenly everybody's using Hunter Biden's like Twitter as an advertising platform. And That's kind of funny.
It is. It's hilarious. It's a hilarious platform with so many
You
opportunities.
can like interact with super famous people and they're just like, what are you guys doing here? And you're like, whatever we want. We're doing whatever we want. Yeah.
I love it when like an actor DM slides. I'm like, hey. Yeah, let's talk.
Yeah. We should probably wrap things up, but I usually end all of the episodes asking 3 questions, and they are about what you're doing, but you already answered one of them, but I'll ask again. So the first one is, what are you reading, or what do you like to read?
I read Yuri manga and nothing else.
Who's that?
Yuri manga. It's a genre.
Oh, manga. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. And what are you listening to?
Today I listened to Baths and Benoit Pollard. I think that's how you say his name.
Okay. And is there anything you're excited about?
A lot.
Yeah?
A lot. I'm not going to tell you about
it. That's fine. That's super.
I'm so excited right now.
Are you? That's cool.
Oh, I will say, I have a new porno project coming up. A COVID safe porno.
What is it? Tell me about it.
Well, it's only COVID safe for me, but I'm basically going to be wearing masks in porn I produce from now on.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Other models, because everyone I have a sexual relationship with is not a model. So I haven't made porn since the pandemic began.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Now you're going back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's
so
good.
We'll see how that goes. That's exciting, but I'm not the most excited about that.
Okay, well, I'm just going to imagine all the things that you might be excited about. And
it's all so sexy and cool.
That's what I assumed. I'll just fill my imagination with your sexy rendezvous that you're not telling us about.
Exactly.
Very mysterious. Where can people find you?
DomRystan.com.
Okay. That sounds great. Well, thank you for chatting with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for having
the
me.
Episode on such a mysterious, sexy note.
You're welcome.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter at sapiotextual or visit my website at jessiesage.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster and the music is by Benjamin J. Beninati. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Not Hustling Pod. To support the show and get sneak peeks, please go to patreon.com/sapiotextual. For more information about our show and what we do here, please visit our website at nothustling.com. Signing off. Have a great week.